So continuing with factoring by grouping. So we have to split these into two groups. So out of this first one, I could factor out an A, and AC divided by A would leave us with C, and 5A divided by A would leave us with 5. Now back here I have a subtract. 4C subtract 20. I need this to end up as C plus 5, because if not, there's no reason for us to factor by grouping. We want them to look the same. So I'm going to factor out -4. So -4C divided by -4. Negative divided by a negative is a positive. 4 divided by 4 is 1, so we're left with C. Then I have -20 divided by -4. Negative divided by a negative is a positive. 20 divided by 4 is 5. Then we're going to factor out C plus 5 to be left with A subtract 4. Factoring by grouping here. So this first one, I could factor out X, and that's all I see that I can factor out. So X, because there's an X here and here. So 3XY divided by X would leave us with 3Y. -4X divided by X would leave us with subtract 4. Now then over here, this sign doesn't match this one, so I'm going to divide by negative, and 2 goes into 6 and Y, so -2. So I have -6Y divided by -2, which would be +3Y, and 8 divided by -2 would be -4. I'm going to factor out my 3Y, subtract 4, and have X subtract 2. Continuing with factoring by grouping. So this first one, I have 6XY subtract 9X. So I can factor out a 3X. So 6XY divided by 3X. 6 divided by 3 is 2. X is canceled. Y. So I'd have 2Y. And then 9X, and it's negative, so 9X divided by 3X would be 3. Right here, they're close, but they have that different sign. So I'm going to factor out a -1, and then a negative divided by a negative is a positive, and a positive divided by a negative is a negative. And I'm going to factor out my grouping, so 2Y subtract 3. Factor the following polynomial. What can I factor out of both of these? I can factor out of 10 and 25 a 5. So I'm going to factor 5 out. I'd be left with 2x cubed plus 5. Okay, 54, 9, and 18. 9 goes into all of them. So I'm going to factor out a 9. And then A is in everything, so I'm going to factor out A. My lowest exponent would be 1, so it's just going to be A. There's a B in all of them, so I can factor out a B. My lowest exponent is 3, so I'm going to factor out the 3. 9 goes into 54, so we're dividing everything by this. So 54 divided by 9 is 6. 2 subtract 1 will leave us with 1A. 7 subtract 3 leave us with 4. 9AB cubed divided by 9AB cubed would be 1. And then I have -18 divided by 9 would be 2. A subtract A is 0. 5 subtract 3 would be 2. Factor the following polynomial. So this is one that was already grouped, so I'll bring out that group and then put my last 2 together because this was my common factor, and then I multiplied it by what was left. Here we go, factor the following polynomial. It's going to be by grouping because there's 4. Out of this first one, I can factor out an 8 and an x, and so I'd be left with x here. And then if I factor out 8x there, I'd be left with just y. Back here, I'm going to factor out a negative 9. Because the sign is different, I have to factor out a negative, and then 9 goes into both of them. There's a 9 with both of them, so I'm just going to take that away. So negative divided by a negative, give me that positive x. Negative 9 divided by negative 9y would give me a positive y. Then factoring that by grouping, I'll bring my x plus y forward. And 8x subtract 9 back. Please, please, please email me over this stuff because I know it's confusing, and help me find the best way to explain this to y'all.